Hello and welcome to day 4. Today I'm going to be thinking about our magic system. And for this world, I've been wondering about what to do. And I was tossing various ideas up in my head. Did I want a 4 elemental system? Did I want a 6 elemental system? Did I want something a little different? And so I was playing with ideas, and honestly, I still haven't fully figured something out. So I'm just going to brainstorm and see what happens. But the notes that I did have, one idea that came to mind is because we're using a system that has the blood of the sea monsters, blood of elves, and magic, with magic being a natural force, impact things. I was thinking that it might be quite a lot of fun to have the bones, the fossils, and the descendants of the sea monsters actually be if not a source of magic, then holding magic within them. And so I was thinking that with magic being a natural force, it would be flowing in various places. And if we recap just a little, we have the elves, dark elves, who were weaving shadows together. And then we had the elves, light elves, when the stars began to shine, and how they were using light and how they were weaving clouds together. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that maybe the elves have some kind of, if not inherent magic, then some kind of magic that flowed through them. Because I don't really want to have innate magic, because that causes problems. Now, it can be done, and it can be done really, really well, but it tends to cause divisions, and that tends to splinter into social classes. And I do that in other writing, and I don't really want to do the same thing over and over and over again. So I'm having to be careful not to use an existing magic system that I have. And there's going to be some overlap, but we'll handle it. And I was thinking that the greatest of the sea monsters would be known as sea monarchs. Sea monarchs, sovereignties, kings, queens of the sea. And I also wanted to have, in the human lands, where the magic continent, where they would build towers. And I was thinking I would call them tower spires, spire towers, piers, some kind of tower. And they would have a great ring on them for each tower spire. And within that would be prisms, either one prism or multiple prisms, maybe several prisms. And they would direct magic in beams back and forth. And so it would go from one tower to another tower to another tower. And this would form a network. And it would basically create an internet for our science fantasy era. And I was also thinking that it might be quite fun to have a different dimension known as the realm of the stars. And so I said that the elves would die after 30 years, the elves of light, and then they'd go be with the stars. And I was thinking it'd be quite fun if they went to a different dimension. And so maybe the stars are not just physical. Maybe they are also in this dimension. Maybe they're in a magical dimension. And again, I'm kind of using other ideas from my existing writing, but we're going to put the stars in 2 places at once. So you'll have the physical stars, and then you'll have the magical stars, or the stars in this realm of the stars, and there can be magic there. And so the physical stars, they weren't always there, and then they ignited. And when the stars began to shine, so some of the elves took on the light, which suggests to me that the stars came in seed form, and maybe they were always within the realm of the stars, but they were being incubated like seeds. And so, like anything else, they grow. And so they start off as the equivalent of acorns, and when they reached a certain point, they ignited. And maybe what happened was the stars were drawing magic. They were seeds planted in this realm, and the realm was a bit like soil. And so they would gather magic into themselves. And when they gained enough magic, they started to shine. And so that caused them to ignite. And so they ignited in the magical realm, and they ignited in the physical realm. And so the magic that was in the magical realm, will say that the elves who were in shadow, the elves, the dark elves, could already weave some of that together, because at that point the stars had not sucked up all of the magic. And we'll say that the stars are a bit like sponges. So before the stars ignited, there was an absolute ocean of magic, lots and lots of magic. It was like soil, it was like an ocean. And then the stars, like sponges, drew the magic into themselves. And then when you have solar flares and solar storms, we'll say that that was an outburst of magic. And so the elves of light, who became the sky elves, would use this magic. And the elves of darkness found that most of the magic had gone. And so some of them hibernated or went into hiding or something. And because of this, we already have two forms of magic. We have starlight magic and we have shadow magic, or the magic in the shadows. And so we already started with this. So that's canon. And what I wanted was to have some of that magic found in water, found in air, found in the earth. When I say the earth, I'm talking about rocks, minerals, crystals, gems. The earth is in the substance, not as in soil and dirt, although it would be in that too. And I was thinking that the starlight would come in the form of lightning and the form of fire. And so these things would have magic. And so the initial magic from shadows soaked into the ice, which covered the planet. And then when the ice melted, it went into the waters, and some of the lightning infused the sky, infused the air with magic. And when the lightning struck the ground, some of that went into the earth and went into the magma, and some of the earth, which already had magic, and the magic from the shadows, which went into the ice, which went into the earth, and the magic from the starlight, which became lightning, went into the earth. And so when the magma was formed, it went into the fire. And so this is how we have our elements. And so there is magic from the magical realm, which is mostly bound up in the stars now. And like I said, it's a natural force. And so the basic elements carry magic. And so this can be manipulated. And while I don't want it to really be a 4-element system or a 6-element system, there are echoes of that. There are overtones of that. And so the magic that people use is to take that charge from the elements. So they are pulling away the energy from these elements and manipulating it. And so this is where those beams and those prisms would come in, because the prisms would be constructed from gems in the earth, and they'd be directing light or starlight through these prisms. And this powers the magical continent. And we'd also find some of the magic of shadows and mist. And that is what I was thinking of doing for the magic system. And there are going to be a few more details there. So how do people access it? Do they learn? Are they born with it? And since there is this taking on of magic, what effects does it have? Well, I think that it would both be learned. And like I said, I don't want anything innate. But I am thinking that maybe there is some connection with humans. You know, where did the humans come from? And I don't want them coming from the elves. I don't want them coming from the dwarves. I don't want them coming from the treants. I don't particularly want them coming from shadow. So I need to think on that. And I'm wondering, maybe they can come from the dirt and from the air. So maybe they're born of starlight. And that would make them similar to the elves. And also similar to the dwarves, because the dwarves came about as the result of elf blood and sea monster blood. And I'm thinking that the elves would feel a kinship to the humans, but there would be a slight tension because the elves were originally created or born, or they were in the darkness. Haven't quite discovered how the elves come about yet, but they were in darkness and some of them turned to the light. Whereas humans would come straight from the light. And they were from the light that met the earth and met the sky. And so that's how they came about. And then we can have the humans and the elves, and they can look similar to each other. And the sky elves who came down to the earth, when they touch the earth, their lifespans will increase. I've decided that their lifespans will increase because they're not going to the realm of the stars anymore. That's where the light elves went. But the elves which came down from the clouds, because of the machines that the humans were using, these tethering machines which pulled the clouds down, which the elves wanted, that, or at least some of the elves wanted, that would allow their elven lifespan to increase because now they're connected more to the mortal realm, and because their feet are on the solid ground instead of being split between the stars and the mortal realm. Now they are mostly in the mortal realm, so they've become more like humans, and so this is a good thing in terms of development of the story. And so we do have this slight tension between the elves, and so you have elder elves, if you want, elves which dwelt in darkness, and some of them are still around, and you had elves of light which aren't really around anymore. There might be a few around, and we can look into that later, because most of them went to be with the stars. And then you had the sky elves, and again, most of those went to be with the stars when they died. But the ones which came to the ground, we can call them earthbound elves rather than skybound elves. And so they walk the earth, and they want to be more like humans. And we can decide whether or not they're compatible, and maybe we'll have half elves and quarter elves and three-quarter elves or something like that. Maybe we'll think about that. But right now, the earthborn elves and the humans are very, very similar. And the humans can have, I don't want to give them an affinity for magic because some of them chose not to. I think that some of them would have an affinity for it because they use it generation in and generation out. And the ones which rejected magic, they would develop a resistance to it. And so then we can have two groups of humans, if you want. Those who develop an affinity for magic and those who reject magic. And so the ones which reject magic will have this resistance, this natural inoculation, this immunity, maybe not full immunity, but partial immunity to magic, whereas the other ones are sensitive to magic. And so this can be our mainstay of the humans. And so as we're looking at these magic systems, the next question is practical application. So while the elves used it to weave clouds and bring up rain and jellyfish and so on, and the treants were touched by magic, the humans have built machines. And so maybe the elves actually are interested in this. Maybe they never had the imagination to build machines. Maybe they were just content being up in the clouds. But now they're seeing the humans building machines, they're fascinated by it, and so they work hand in hand with the humans and with the dwarves. And maybe the dwarves, since they built their stone holds, and most of them had to flee because of the volcanic seismic activity when the continent split or the continental shelves were formed, which reignited the volcanoes, maybe they had to learn new skills. And maybe they learned the skills that the humans were using because they were used to cutting rock and things. So maybe some of them did become blacksmiths. Maybe some of them became ironmongers. Maybe some of them helped start creating machinery. Now, on the other continent, the non-magic continent, they're already developing steam, and they're using wood to build steam machines, and they've been ignoring magic. And I don't want the world to be so saturated with magic that magic is everywhere. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for everybody to ignore magic. It only makes sense if magic is gathered in some locations and it is seen as a corrupting influence because it split the world. And so we have these two different energy forms. And I do want there to be electricity, which can be formed from steam and from its turbines. So on the one hand, we'll have the non-magical humans using steam and electricity, and they'll be using wood, and they'll just be firing their machines. And that will develop similarly to Earth, but with a few distinctions. Whereas on the other hand, we'll have those which are using techno-magic as science fantasy. And at some point, these two forces will collide. Not sure which episode in their time period that will happen, but that's okay. We'll get to that later. Right now, we're just world building. And I don't really want magic just to be held by the nobility. I want it to be, how do I want this to be? I don't want everybody having magic. And I don't really want it being a meritocracy or a magetocracy. But I do want those who are gifted in magic to work. So I'm going to think about the structure of society. And I think everyone will be put through school. I think that the Duchess, who ruled the magical continent with the kingdoms of the Pearl, will insist on having state schools. And everyone is schooled in magic on the magical continent, and everybody is tested in it. And those who show an affinity will probably be taken in by the state, and they will train. And I think there'll also be private academies. So while there is a magical state academy, I think that there'll be private institutions which are backed by the state. And rather than have people fighting, some of it will be privatized, but under the umbrella of the state. And so there will be rivalries, there will be factions, but it's still officially under the umbrella of the state. So different agencies, if you will. And the different agencies will have different tasks. And those who don't show any interest in magic, don't show a very strong affinity, they'll probably be working other jobs. And I think that there will probably be magical forges, and it will just be taking the charge off of the elements and transferring it into different things. And so we might have automatons, we might have machines, and again, there are going to be airships, and there'll also be trade, there'll also be mining, there'll be some kind of entertainment. And I think that the entertainment industry is going to be huge. And I think that magic will play a huge part in it. And I think that holograms will be a big, big part of the entertainment. And I think that this will separate it from the non-magical continent, because on the magical continent, there'll be very expansive light shows. Whereas on the non-magical continent, there'll be less. And so the entertainment will take a different form. We might put sports on the non-magical continent, and we'll put light shows and theatre on the magical continent. And there might be some kind of sport that people engage in on the magical continent. I haven't got there yet, but we'll think about that. And I think that magic will be used mostly to help advance society. Now, in which direction will vary, and everybody's going to have a different idea of what that looks like and what is good and what isn't. And we'll have those who want to amass power for themselves. And I think that the ability to pull a charge from the elements and then insert it into something, that will probably gain people prestige. But there are going to be different types of prestige. So there'll be social influence, and then there'll be the influence of being a craftsman. And there will also be the influence of being able to govern. And I think that being a school teacher in one of these state schools or in these private institutions, these agencies, I think that will be a position of great prestige, and they will be considered celebrities. And I also think that the nobility of the land, the royalty of the land, most of them will be the rulers. And those rulers, some of them will be tied back to the Duchess. Some of them won't be. And so you'll have the traditional rulers, and then you'll have those who use magic. And I imagine that many of the nobles will want to train in magic, but not all of them. And so you'll have those in the same family, some who use magic and some who don't. And some will have some small magical ability, and then those who have large magical ability. And this will be very important when it comes to the military. And I think that there won't really be a military in the traditional sense. I think that the airships will be essentially a fleet, an air fleet, in case the non-magical continent returns. And I think that lasers will probably be one of the main weapons. And that will be through magic users taking a charge from elements, putting that charge in some kind of battery, and then shooting it through a lens, through a ring, and then that will be their weapons, their laser cannons. And so they'll use that to hunt monsters, and they'll use it sparingly. And there will be police officers on the ground who will arrest renegade magic users and renegade citizens who break the law. Of course, there'll be highwaymen, and some of them will be magic users and some of them won't, because there'll always be outlaws of one description or another. But I think that most piracy will actually occur on this magical internet. And I think that a lot of it won't necessarily be physical. So I think there'll be a lot of piracy of these light shows, and it will be mostly towards fashion. I think that fashion will be huge in this world, at least in the magical continent. And so fashion and light shows will basically be the social currency. And so people who copy them, people who change them, I think the highest privilege, other than being someone in one of these schools, these institutions, these agencies, will be those who actually take part in these light shows. So actresses and actors, similar to our world. And so people who are copycatting them, I think that will be the main form of piracy. And this will generate huge amounts of wealth. And I think that people will use the currency, social currency, to pay for these things. And I think that the light shows will probably be either a subscription basis or paying for them ad hoc. And from that will be the main form of the economy. And of course, there'll be food and there'll be other things. But there needs to be a downside from taking away the charge from the elements. And I think that will actually cause the area that the magic was in to wither. And this will set them at odds with the treants and the forests, which were infused with magic, because it will drain the land of that charge. And so the elements will return to normal. And so there'll be something similar to Fallout, magical Fallout, but in the negative. So it will be a dry zone, and that dry zone will have to regenerate over time. And that will only come from the solar flares from the magical realm. And in this way, magic becomes finite. So there has to be a limitation on how much magic can be used. And I think that there'll be magical banks where magic is taken and it is stored in batteries. And those batteries are used to fund these light shows. And they'll be used to fund the lasers and other things, laser cannons for the military. And so I think there'll be a very tight rein on this. And so people will be drawing magic out, but it will also be under heavy regulations. So the magic is not exhausted completely. And that's what our magic system is going to be. That's what it's going to look like. And we're going to talk about characters later, I think, and the impact that this will have on the world. Anyway, that's all for today. So I hope you've had fun listening to this video. Do like, do subscribe, share it with a friend. Let us know what you think. Bye for now.